Alright guys, welcome back. Today we're taking a look at one of my newest acquisitions. This is a Russian ij70. This is pretty much a commercial variant of the Makarov. And this was produced in the 90s by a country, let me see, try to pronounce this properly. Baikal, Baikal. Pretty much after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they started production on some commercial firearms, particularly shotguns and whatnot. And you see, I'll go over the safety features on this for a while. My gun is clear. But in the 90s, they came out with a commercial variant of the Russian Makarov and marketed it in the US under the title of the ij70. Now, some of the features on this gun are specific to this gun because of importation restrictions. And then later on, of course, these were outright banned for importation to the U.S. as being a essentially a Russian-produced firearm. Now, pretty much everything about this gun is just like your regular Makarov pistol, with the exception of it being a double-stack magazine. So what that means is you get about, I believe, 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, you get 10 rounds in it. And I would love to find a couple extra of these magazines. However, they are kind of expensive and sometimes hard to find, because I suspect if you were to remove these divots right here, which actually limit the capacity, you might be able to get some more rounds in here. I would say possibly up to 4 to 6 more rounds. And I haven't found any specific literature on it, but I suspect this may be one of those changes that for the importation market, because it is a little strange that it's limited specifically to 10. And as you can see, that's almost, 2/3 of the magazine that is taken up right there, that you can't load cartridges in. And most handgun cartridges, you can do far more of that. The spring can be compressed a lot more. I haven't taken out this spring to see exactly how much can be compressed, but I would assume that it's possible to get quite a few more cartridges inside of this magazine. Now, of course, it being limited to 10 would make sense for importation. I know a gun that is very similar to this is the CZ82. It's also a double stack 9mm Makarov, and I believe some of those are 16 rounds. So I would love to find an extra one of these in order to, just simply drill those out. It might be a good idea to put a couple tack welds and sand those down and see, if some more rounds could be fit inside of this. Now, I've looked on the market and there does not appear to be any other aftermarket high capacity magazines for these, as these guns tend to be somewhat rare in the US currently. They aren't exactly high valued and they aren't particularly high collector's value as of yet. However, they are starting to get there. Yeah, there was probably a time when these pistols were probably about the same amount as, like, say, a regular Makarov or something like that. You probably could have gotten these for $50 at one point in time. When these probably first came into the U.S., I have to see maybe what some of the pricing was on these, but I imagine they were relatively affordable, just like many other Makarov pistols. One of the other things that they had to add is an adjustable rear sight. I'm not exactly sure how that really falls into the importation, but from what I've read, only the US branded ij70s came with these adjustable sights. And this does come with a bit of advantages. Well, one, you can make this a little bit more accurate. You can actually adjust your elevation on this handgun, unlike a lot of other Russian-produced handguns. But it also does leave the possibility to where you could put better sights on this. If you look at how it's machined, it might be possible to even shelf this out and put a micro red dot on here if you really wanted to. Or at the very least, you could possibly put at least a night sights, or even, what is it, the fiber optic rear sights on here. Something that I thought about with this gun is possibly because it isn't a military surplus gun, so it doesn't really matter so much if it gets bubbled. Maybe playing around with it and doing some, sport type sights on this thing. It does shoot relatively accurately. Of course, I'll go over this in a while. It has a lot of the advantages of the Makarov family of pistols as far as accuracy goes, plus a couple other little things. Now, of course, I'm going to go over some of the features on it. It does say on here, KBI, 9mm Makarov, that serial number. This gun does have separate serial numbers on it. I'm assuming importation and then other marks or whatnot. So this serial number right here and right here match the frame. I'm going to assume that's the original serial number, and then this is probably an importation one. You got some other marks right here. This was made in the IMEZ factory in Russia, and this is ij70 18AH. I'm not exactly sure what the variations between the other guns are, but I'm not 100% on that. But it does have some interesting markings on it, and the markings on here, the way this is marked is kind of strange. It almost looks like it's laser etched, but then in white somehow. Not sure how that's done, but that is a little interesting, especially for a foreign gun coming out of Russia. Now, as I said, because of especially now, these are illegal to import to the U.S., which sucks, because they are relatively nice guns, and it's nice to have something in the Makarov size that is a double stack and does have higher capacity. Now, one of the features on this gun that does make it improved over other Makarov styles is it does have a last round hold open, which is nice because and you can see on the magazine it has the slot for the last round hold open. You could, after you're done shooting, pop another one in, and you're good to go. Now on the safety, it does have a very Makarov slide safety on it, but if you look, it does have this notch here. Now, one of the things I don't like about this gun is it doesn't have a over travel firing pin, and it doesn't. I don't think it's spring loaded either. We'll look at that in a second, but it doesn't have it to where if the hammer is sitting directly all the way on the firing pin does extrude out up against a cartridge. So that does make it a little less safe to carry with a cartridge in it, unless you have the safety on. Now with the safety, it does have a decocker with the safety, and if you look, when the safety goes down onto it, it does put a bar down that stops the hammer from hitting the firing pin. And of course, you can't move the hammer, you can't move the slide. Everything's locked up on the gun with the safety on, so that's kind of nice. Now, as far as takedown, it does take down exactly like pretty much everything else in the Makarov family. You pull down the trigger guard, lock it up on the side there, pull back up, and slide forward. And of course, you got that very Makarov design, fixed barrel, recoil spring on the barrel. Got some import marks and stuff in here. Not a whole lot to say in here besides the fact that it takes down like every other Makarov. And of course, that does make it really easy for field strip, and for cleaning, and of course for clearing jams. Now, as you can see here, I am off on safe. The firing pin seems to be all the way forward, and it is extruding quite a bit, and here it has no spring retaining it to the rear. So, and you see with the firing pin pushed back, it is all the way forward. So that's one thing I don't particularly like about it. Unlike a lot of my other guns, I really like spring retained firing pins, and it could be possible to include one in here. I haven't taken the firing pin out, so I'm not 100% sure if it would be possible to modify it. It's not the end of the world. This isn't a gun that I would 100% trust for a carry. I have carried it a couple times in my pocket because I do like these pocket-sized guns and a cartridge that's a little bit more hefty than 380. Now, speaking by 380, in the video, you're going to see that this gun does not like it. a couple months back or so, I did a short video where I talked about how some of the Makarov family of guns will take 380 and shoot it and cycle it just fine in a pinch if you don't have any 9x18 Makarov. And it's perfectly safe to do. The Makarov is undersized, or the 380 is undersized compared to the Makarov. It has less power. There's very little chance of anything dangerous going on with the cartridge. Worst case scenario, you might have a cartridge that swells up a little bit more in firing and may not extract. As you've seen that video, my Polish P64 ran it absolutely flawlessly without any issues whatsoever. It fired it and ejected and fed the next round out of the magazine perfectly fine. This gun, not so much. In the video, you'll see I accidentally loaded a full magazine of 380 in this gun first and started firing it. And the first couple rounds went just fine. And then, I had a couple, where it stovepiped. And a couple where it just wouldn't fire at all. And I have a couple suspicions of why that is. So, the first thing is, the reason why I don't think sometimes it's will extract all the time, is because this recoil spring is significantly heavier filling than on my P64. So I think the slightly less powerful 380 may not have enough power to actually recoil this back all the way to eject properly. So that's one theory. The other thing I noticed is some of the cartridges weren't even actually getting hit by the firing pin. It was barely tapping it. And then also, they sat in there and had a little bit more wiggle. So one thing I'm also thinking, and I'm going to go grab a cartridge truck and show you my theory on this. I'll be right back. Okay, so part of my theory is the chamber on this gun is actually oversized slightly to almost more like a machine gun profile. You see the regular 9x18 fits in there, and even the 9x18 has a little bit of wiggle room. Actually, one second. Let me go grab my P64. Okay, so you see here I have my P64 and the Makarov sitting side, the ij70 sitting side by side, and you see the length of this recoil spring. The barrel is actually longer on the ij70 slightly, but the recoil spring is much shorter. So I think that's one of the reasons. The other thing is, like I said, this wiggle room on the 9x18 in the chamber, compared to my P64, it has similar wiggle room, which is, kind of interesting. You see the cartridge just sit in there a little more shallow, or a little deeper than on that. It's about the same. But what's interesting is, say, when I take one of these 380s and put it in there, see I have a little bit more wiggle, but it does sit out a little bit further than on the ij70. It sits quite a bit deeper. There's even more wiggle. So I think this chamber is just slightly more deep and a little bit slack compared to on the Polish Makarov. So I think that's possibly one reason why it just doesn't like the 380 compared to the P64. And it's safe, it's not reliably shooting. So I'm going to put the P64 back together. And put this back together. Now, as you can see, size together, they're virtually identical. The ij70 is slightly longer, not enough to really notice, and it's got a slightly longer grip, but it is fatter in profile. And of course, this profile is a little closer to the original Makarov as opposed to the ij70. But either way, this is the one I normally would carry as my pocket gun. But the ij70 is actually, I seem to be more accurate with it than on my Polish Makarov, which is surprising to me because I've had this thing for a lot longer and I've done a lot more shooting. I probably got 500-600 rounds through this handgun. And I can probably say I'm not as accurate with it as I am with this. And it's part of the sights and, you know, a slightly longer sight radius. Now you can see the difference in these magazines also. And yet this one only holds 2 more rounds. And I'm pretty sure it's those dimples. And I'm pretty sure that's just an importation limitation. You know, 10 round magazine, you know, all that BS. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna... And like, unlike the Polish Makarov, when it is chambered, the P64 does have a indicator that it is chambered. The ij70 does not. Now, I do keep the ij70 chambered and ready to rock with the hammer down all the time because it does have that over travel firing pin. You can have the hammer all the way down, and it's not going to actually contact the cartridge, and that's perfect for the double action. Now, one thing I don't like over the I like about the ij70 over the P64 is the hammer does protrude out quite a bit more, making it easier to grab and cock if you're ready to go, if you don't want to use the double action. Now, as I said before, the ij70, just like every other Makarov, is a double action handgun and single action. Single action pull, got a little bit of a mush there, then you hit a wall, hit that wall, pull, 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 got a little bit more mush, and then it just breaks. And then the reset, got a bit of reset right there, and then you got a little bit more mush, and it's ready to go. Overall, it's a pretty nice shooting gun, considering, and it may not have the build quality of, say, like the P64 with the Polish gun. And of course, the Polacks, they make everything nice. If you notice, I mean, everything's polished on it. The ij70, you can see it's got like a phosphate finish on the lower. You can slightly see some machine marks on here, particularly on the lower. It's polished right here around these marks for some reason. And of course, you know, you can still see some marks here. It does have this checkering across the top for anti-reflection. Same thing as the P64, however, it is nowhere near as wide as the P64. Overall, you know, the P64s are just really nicely made guns. But that doesn't take away from, like, say, the ij70 being what it is. Now, I found this one in a pawn shop, and actually, just, you know, when I did that DayZ video a while back, I used my P64 in place of an ij70 because I did not have one. So when I saw this, I've actually been looking at one for a while. There was one on Texas Gun Trader I was looking at. The guy was not budging on the price. And I would have had to have driven a little ways to go get it. So I, you know, just kind of passed it off. But I came across this one in a pawn shop for, what was it, $450 or something like that? It was $450, and I actually talked the guy down to just like $399. So I mean, it was like still close to $450 after taxes. But I got it considerably cheaper than what the guy on Texas Gun Trader was asking, which he started his at like $1,000 like 6 months ago, because I first saw it around Christmas time last year. And then, you know, every once in a while he'd post it again, lower the price a little bit, and then, you know, a little more and a little more and a little more, and then it was at $500, and he just wasn't budging away from $500. And I have a sneaking suspicion that this might actually be the very same gun that he was selling. I want to say, somewhere on my phone, I have some pictures and ads. I could maybe try to compare the serial number, but there's not a whole lot of these out there, so it's not a stretch to think it might be the same gun. Now, I do know there are some aftermarket grips for these out here, and if you see, the grip is actually quite a bit thicker than it actually has to be. I wouldn't mind seeing about looking for a thinner grip. I'm not 100% sure. I don't think I've actually taken the grip off this thing. I might have. See, let's take it off right this second. Let's see here. I think I have, but I believe it just unscrews and then slides down and off. I don't believe that this screw has any function as far as retaining anything special, and that is a funky looking screw. Look at that thing. But it should come right down and off. Yeah, and see, so I mean that the grip is considerably fatter than it really has to be. Now I don't like the mag release, just like I don't like the mag release on the P64. However, on the P64 it is a little bit more intuitive, and it's not so solid as say on the ij70, where if you have the magazine in, you really got to kind of, it sits really flush, and there's not a shelf, and it's not flat like say on the P64. So you really have to, you know, kind of get it just right in order to get it properly. But I wouldn't mind looking and trying to find a thinner grip. I have small hands. This grip isn't horrible for me, but certainly something thinner would be nicer. And you can see it wouldn't be too hard to profile something that would be really, really thin fitting on here. You could even do something that is literally just a plate, a plate on this side, and comes down just barely enough here to cover this, and this could be exposed. If I can not drop that, you can see it could be possible to make something a little bit more ergonomic for this grip that would reduce its profile quite a bit. So that might be something I'm looking forward to, looking to in the future. This, based on capacity alone and the sights, this one is going to replace my P64 as my pocket gun. You know, sometimes I don't feel like carrying the Jericho and dealing with the holster and all that stuff, and it's easier just to have a gun I could slide in my pocket, you know, and carry it around, as opposed to my full-size gun. Now, of course, 9x18 is a little bit less hot than 9mm Luger, but then again, you know, it's not so much difference where it's gonna be that noticeable in the event of an actual gunfight. It's just the capacity. So, like say my my Jericho, with a regular capacity mag, it carries 17. My slightly extended one that I have in it now, it has 21 in it, and then I even have a 30-round magazine for it. So you know, but I do have these ballistic tips on for here for self-defense. This is what I carry in it, and it will do the job. I mean, if you think about people carry 380 as a self-defense gun, and even some people carry 22 and 22 mag, I'd still rather have this over 380 or 22 or 22 mag, especially in a gun that's still basically the same size as a 380. I mean, yes, there are compact 380s that are quite a bit smaller than this, but I'd still challenge you to find one that's going to have the accuracy of a fixed-barreled Makarov platform. It's very gently shooting. It has less recoil than the P64, which I find surprising because the P64 feels actually a little heavier. And you know what? I'm going to grab my scale, and let's weigh these two compared to each other empty. Alright, so the P64 with the round taken out of that chamber, you can see that indicator is down, weighs 1 pound 3.8 ounces. Okay, and then the ij70, empty as well, 1 pound 6.5 ounces. So you're talking about a 3-ounce difference, less than a 3-ounce difference on the ij70 than the P64, and you get more capacity, more accuracy, a better grip, and a gun that honestly recoils less than the ij7 or than the P64. The P64 has a very snappy recoil. You really feel it in the web of your hand. The ij70, not so much. And of course, it does have a better grip on it, but I would much prefer having a thin grip like this, which would work on here, than this fat one. And that's just for, you know, carrying and concealability. A thin grip with rubber on the back of it would be perfect on this gun. Now, of course, let's also load the magazines, and let's weigh the magazines loaded. So, well, let's just weigh the whole gun loaded. So, we're talking 1 pound, 7.6 ounces loaded on the P64. Now, the ij70, the mag is a little bit more finicky as far as getting it in here properly. You do have to kind of wiggle it in, and I think that might actually be... so, one thing with the ij70 with this grip, you actually have to back the screw out a little bit. Screw can't be all the way flush, otherwise it will interfere with the magazine, which is strange. So, and we're looking at 1 pound, 12.6 ounces. So it is heavier loaded, but it does have a bigger magazine, more ammo. So that's to be expected. But then again, not too bad. There are definitely worse options out there. There are some revolvers that weigh way more than this. So, get down to brass tacks. The ij70, do I regret buying this gun? No. Certainly not. Hell no. I've been hunting for one of these for a while. I was actually looking for a CZ82, which I may still get one in the future. If I ever come across one with a good deal, because I wanted a Makarov with a double stack magazine. The CZ82s, I believe you can get those with the full capacity magazine because they are not made in Russia, therefore you don't have as many restrictions on them. And because it's CZ, there's probably more aftermarket parts on them to begin with, because people love CZ firearms. They just do. Now, there are some companies that make aftermarket grips for the regular Makarov. And I'm not sure they would fit on here. I wouldn't mind trying to see if it would fit, but sometimes I'm not willing to throw away extra money for something that may not work. If they got a good return policy, I might try it. The double stack really does change things. But if you can find them, you have to think about it right now. Guns are going up, especially stuff from Russia, especially stuff from, you know, anything over in, you know, old com block stuff. The prices are going up. I got this gun right now for, you know, like I said, under $500. Don't be surprised if next year you can't find one of these for under, you know, $600-700, or, you know, say $1,000. I just looked on Gunbroker a little while ago, and there's not really any of these on Gunbroker. There's a couple, but there's not too many of them. They're around the price I spent. But it's just like the same thing with some other guns I'm going to show you in some videos that are coming up. Just a couple years ago, they were a quarter the price of what they are now. So, keep that in mind. They are going to end up being collectible, despite being not as collectible as the military, you know, variant of this gun. But, trying to think if there's anything else I've missed on this gun. It's pretty basic. Like I said, if you know anything about Makarovs, mechanically, this gun's the exact same. Really, the only thing that's really different about this from most Makarov platforms is the adjustable rear sights. And I don't believe most of the Makarovs have a last round hold open, which is really nice, actually, for something like this. And personally, that alone makes this a far more modernized gun. The only thing I wish they would have done is did away with the hilt safety and went to a modern, you know, the hilt mag release, and went to a modern mag release up here, which, if you can see, there's plenty of room to put one there. But anyways, I'll see y'all guys next time. I have some funny stuff coming up. I have some more in-depth stuff coming up. I got some stuff I've had for a while that I haven't posted videos on. I've teased it, but I haven't posted videos on because I'm thoroughly testing it and stuff like that. But just stick around and see what's coming up, and be prepared for some laughs here in the next month or so. Y'all have a good one.